the thesis? What was the core idea that touched off the firestorm?
Well, I'm born in New York, was raised all around the metropolitan area, and I've lived in New York City my entire adult life. I own a business in New York. My kids live in New York, go to school there. And so, but I've been seeing some disturbing trends. The title of the article was New York City is dead forever. Here's why. And the problem is that I was asking a lot of questions to people I knew, and I had all sorts of people on my podcast who were, experts or whatever, and everybody seemed to be in denial about what was happening. Like everyone was saying, and this is what Seinfeld said, is like, oh, New York City's got grit. New York, we always come back. Don't count New York City out yet. And I'm like, yeah, but what about X, Y, Z, A, B, C? Oh, don't worry. Once the vaccine or once, there's a new mayor. Everybody had once there's X, everybody will flood back into the city. Because, 420,000 people, almost 500,000 people have left the city since March. And, there's lots of different directions to attack this, but I essentially point out that already probably 30% or more of the restaurants are permanently closed. They're never going to open again. That's a big number with 100,000 employees included in that. Already, Midtown offices are not, you can go back to work, but they're only 5% filling up because employees are still remote, and I give reasons why they're never going to come back, or they're never going to fully come back, which is like, people say, oh, well, Midtown's not New York City. True, but that's the entire industry. That's where most of the revenues of New York City come from. And then you have, Broadway's down, which means tens of millions of tourism revenues, hotels, thousands of restaurants. And now, even since the article, I don't know why the mayor is doing this to Blasio, but, there's not going to be indoor dining at restaurants till 2021, which means 95% of New York City restaurants will go out of business. And that's not like an opinion, that's fact. I am a storefront business owner in New York City. I know the community, 95% of those storefront owners will go out of business. And again, we're just sort of touching the surface.
Let me just jump in and ask you this. Is this a New York City story? In other words, is this specific to the mayor we have here and a variety of other social conditions? Or is this something that you think is going to be happening all across the country and potentially all across the world?
That's a great question and a lot of people have been asking me that, and the answer is it's not as much de Blasio as people think. In fact, I left him out of the article on purpose because the problems that I mentioned, for instance, I didn't mention the indoor dining issue because, okay, maybe they negotiate and figure that out, I don't know. But the issues I mentioned are very much, or they've already happened. Like 30% of the restaurants are already out of business. The Midtown, it's already 400,000 people who have left the city, and a good chunk of them not coming back. There's already apartment vacancies at an all-time high. You even see, I wrote this on August 13th, it's September 2nd now, and the latest article is, U-Haul, you can't rent a U-Haul in New York City. So in terms of the other cities, I do think first-tier cities, specifically New York City, LA, San Francisco, are having serious problems. And the second or third tier cities like Denver, Austin, Boulder, Phoenix, Miami, Nashville, any of the Charlestons, so there's like 20 Charlestons, all of them, they're going to do fine. And I think the good news is that opportunity is going to be dispersed now throughout the entire country. It's no longer going to be the case that you say, oh, if you want to be a success, go to New York or LA or San Francisco, even though all those companies are moving out of those cities. So, but New York City is going to be hit the hardest. It's the densest. It's, the tax base is going away. The deficits are skyrocketing. De Blasio is already talking about firing significant numbers of city employees, which means if you have no garbage collectors, you're going to have more garbage. If you have no EMTs, you're going to have worse health care. If you have less teachers, you're going to have worse education and police and so on and on and on. This is a major problem. They need to raise more money than is possible to raise.
Yeah. James, it's just struck me. There's no way we're going to be able to cover this topic in 7 minutes. I don't know if you have time, but we'd love to get you back in for a longer segment.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do it. James Altucher.
Thanks so much, Ash.
Interesting points. Ed, what did you think?
I thought it was a great interview. I think that James is an entertaining guest, first and foremost. You know, the way he speaks is great. He's a comedy guy, so I can see that coming through, that he really has a certain dynamic. But, you know, the interesting bit for me, actually, is in terms of thinking of the forward calendar here at Real Vision, because that is, you know, part of the new normal thing that we're talking about. Is this the new normal? That, you know, the fact that all these people are leaving New York. Is James right, or is he wrong? I think we need to get a bunch of different people together to talk about that, you know, in terms of real estate, residential, commercial, in terms of, is it the new normal that Tesla is you know, ripping off to the races? There are a lot of different things that are happening right now because of the pandemic that seem like they could last forever. But, you know, the latest things that I hear is that in London, as an example, people are going back to their restaurants, you know, that, you know, business as usual is slowly returning. So, you know, I have my doubts, but I'm really interested to see the full picture.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's regional and even like state by state. I understand New Jersey is about to start opening indoor dining. So maybe who would have ever thought it? New Jersey is going to be the big party spot for New Yorkers to flock to this winter. Yeah, I thought James was great. You know, he has a lot of interesting things to say.